So today on this yom, we'll be looking on Yakhazaqal 19, and we're going to do another exegetical study. So Yakhazaqal 19 is a prophetic or lament directed at the royal house of Yahudah, focusing particularly on the final sovereigns before the Babylonian exile. It uses symbolic imagery of lions and a vine to describe the tragic decline of Dawoodic leadership. This is not just a political critique, it's a covenantal tragedy, portraying how the Shalum, or the princes of Yahudah, broke belief with Yahuwah and lead the nation into ruin. So I'm going to ask someone just to read Yakhazaqal 19 for us, and we're going to do an exegetical study on it.
19, you said 1 through
the end.
Oh, all of it?
All of it.
Okay. And take up a lamentation for the leaders of Israel, and you shall say, what a lioness was your mother among the lions. She lay down among the lions. In the midst of the young lions, she reared her cubs. And she brought up one of her cubs, and he became a young lion. And he learned to tear the prey. He devoured men. The nations heard of him. He was caught in their pit, and they brought him with chains to the land of Matsarym. When she saw, as she waited, that her expectancy was lost, she took another of her cubs and made him a young lion. And he went out among the lions, became a young lion, and he learned to tear the prey. He devoured men. And he knew their widows and laid waste their cities. And the land and all who filled it was stunned by the noise of his roaring. The nations came against him from the provinces on every side and spread their net over him. He was caught in their pit, and they put him in a cage in chains and brought him to the sovereign of Babel. They brought him in nets, so his roar was no longer heard on the mountains of Israel. Your mother was like a vine in your vineyard, planted by the waters, a bearer of fruit and branching because of many waters. And she had strong rods for scepters of rulers, and her stature was exalted among the thick branches, and was seen in her height with the mass of its branches. But she was uprooted in wrath. She was cast down to the ground, and the east wind dried her fruit. Her strong rods were broken and withered. Fire consumed them. And now she is planted in the wilderness in a dry and thirsty land. And fire went out from a rod of her branches. It devoured her fruit, so that she was no strong rod, a scepter to rule. This is a lament, and it shall be a lament.
All right. Yada Yahuwah. Until the for reading. All right. So the phrase take up a lamentation for the Shalum, or princes of Israel. So Shakina, lift up a lamentation. This is a command of public mourning, not private sorrow. So looking at this other Hebrew word, or Arabic word, Nashai, Israel, which represent the rulers, princes, and chiefs, leaders of Israel. So these terms avoid Malachi totally, realize it did not mention any form of malak or any form of sovereign. And we might be wondering why. You see, it's because these men were sovereigns and in sovereigns in the name, but fail as covenantal stewards. So they fail as sovereign. They totally fail. So from the Torah context, the Nashi or the leaders was to represent Yahuwah's authority under Torah. And we're going to reference this to Badabar, Numbers 10, verse 4. And also we're going to reference it to Yakhazaqal 45, verse 8 to 9. So we're going to ask someone to take it for us.
Badabar 10, verse 4. And if they blow one, then the leaders, the heads of the thousands of Yisrael shall gather to you.
Right, Toda. And Yakhazaqal 45, verse 8 to 9.
Of the land, this is his possession in Israel, and my sharim, or leaders, or princes, or chiefs, shall no longer oppress my people, and they shall give the land to the house of Israel according to their tribes. Thus said the Rosh Yahudah, enough, you princes of Israel. Put away violence and plundering, and do right ruling and righteousness, and stop your evictions of my people, declares the Adani Yahudah.
All right, Toda for reading. So they were given the option, they were given the rights to represent Yahuwah, but because they're in their leadership position and was not honoring Yahuwah by living by the Torah. So their fall do not only represent a political failure, but also a spiritual breach of leadership. So if we look into Adabarim or Deuteronomy 17, verse 14 to 20, we can see where sovereigns were to rule in humility and Torah obedience and reverence to Yahuwah, but in which these leaders that we're going to talk about also fail to uphold these things. So we're going to ask someone to read Adabarim 17, verse 14 to 20 for us.
When you come to the land which Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you, and shall possess it, and shall dwell in it, and you shall say, let me appoint a sovereign over me like all the Gentiles that are around me. You shall certainly appoint a sovereign over you, whom Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose. Appoint a sovereign over you from among your brothers. You are not allowed to appoint a foreigner over you, who is not your brother. Only he is not to increase horses for himself, nor cause the people to return to Matsarym to increase horses. For Yahuwah has said to you, do not return that way again. And he is not to increase wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor is he to greatly increase silver and gold for himself. And it shall be, when he sits on the throne of his reign, that he shall write for himself a copy of this Torah in a book, from the one before the Kohanim, the Levites, and it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he learns to revere Yahuwah his Elohim, and guard all the words of this Torah and these laws to do them, so that his heart is not lifted up above his brothers, and so as not to turn aside from the command, right or left, so that he prolong his days in his reign, he and his children, in the midst of Israel.
All right, so the for reading. So we see Yahuwah giving the criteria or of our leaders what they should be doing or following. But we, as I said earlier, the leaders here totally fail of honoring a Dabarin 17 verse 14 to 20. So looking at verse 2, and the phrase, your mother was like a lioness among lions. So the Abrit word for lioness is labia. So this is Yahudah, from whom sovereigns were to raise, and we can arise, who were to arise. We're going to look at Bereshit, or Genesis 49, verse 9 to 10.
Yahudah is a lion's cub. From the prey you have gone up, my son, or my band. He bowed down, he crouched like a lion, and like a lion who rouses him. The scepter shall not turn aside from Yahudah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shilah or Shiloh comes, and to him is the obedience of peoples. Binding, said to verse what?
10.
Oh, verse 10. Okay.
Toda for reading. So here we see that the lion's cub being represented as Yahudah. So looking at the other Abrit word, Rabat Sa, which means she lay down. She was positioned among the nation as a royal house. That's Yahudah, Torah. Not just aggressive, but resting in royal confidence. So the inside, the mother, which he called the Davidic line or the dynasty, not one individual woman. Yahudah was resting among lions. We simply mean among other nations or among other sovereigns. But she raised her own cubs to become violent rulers, violating the Davidic role as shepherd sovereigns. So looking at the first cub is Yahudah, or Jehoahaz, son of Josiah or Yashayahu. Yashayahu. So he reigned only 3 months before being captured by Pharaoh and taken to Matsarym. We're going to look at 2nd Malachim or 2nd Kings 23, looking at verse 31 to 34. But I also want to read it for us.
Yahuahaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of ShamarYahu of Libnah. And he did what was evil in the sight
Verse 32.
of Yahudah, according to all that his Abim, or his fathers, did. And Pharaoh Necho imprisoned him at Riblah in the land of Hamath to keep him from reigning in Jerusalem. And he imposed on the land a fine of 100 kikars of silver and a kikar of gold. And Pharaoh Necho appointed Eliakim, son of Yashyahu, to reign in the place of his father Yashyahu, or Yashyahu, and changed his name to Yahuyakim. And Pharaoh took Yahuachaz and went to Matsarym, and he died there.
So that for reading. So here we see Yahuachaz not living correctly or not ruling the way that he should have been ruling. So Kafari on the Kafir, the Greek word which mean equal to young lion, which mean not fully mature in wisdom.
Uyalach bari ariyuth,
which equal or mean he walk among lions, a metaphor for engaging in international alliances or political power games. So what's the Torah reflection? Israel was to be separated, and this is according to Devarim 7, reading from 1 to 6, and it's not to mimic the nation. So we're gonna read Devarim 7, reading from verse 1 to 6. Gonna ask someone to take it for us.
Devarim 7. Verse 1 to 6.
Verse 1 to 6.
When Yahudah your Elohim brings you into the land which you go to possess, he shall also clear away many nations before you, the Hittites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than you. And when Yahudah your Elohim gives them over to you, you shall smite them and put them under the ban completely. Make no covenant with them, and show them no favor. And do not intermarry with them. You do not give your daughter to his son or to his ban, and you do not take his bath or daughter for your ban. For he turns your banim, or your sons, away from following me to serve other mighty ones. Then the displeasure of Yahudah shall burn against you and promptly destroy you. But this is what you do to them: break down their altars and destroy their pillars, and cut down their asherim and burn their carved images with fire. For you are a Kadash people to Yahudah your Elohim. Yahuwah your Elohim has chosen you to be a people for himself, a treasured possession above all the peoples on the face of the earth.
Yahudah.
Yahuwah.
So we see Yahuwah is telling us to separate ourselves from the other nation, not to follow the other nation in what they're doing, their practices, their custom, everything. Do not do what they do. But we see where the ruler decided to go against what Yahuwah instructed, and to go and to follow other nation and violating the criteria that we read earlier in Barren, Deuteronomy 17, verse 14 to 20, that shows the criteria of the leaders, what they should be doing or what they should be following. So symbolism, and we are looking at key terms here. So he learned to catch prey is equal to political ambition, but with corruption and violence. The second phrase, symbolic, nation heard of him. This is equal to diplomatic entanglements. And the third statement, taken in a pit, is equal to a hunter's trap, symbolizing foreign entrapment due to disobedience. So what's the prophetic echo from this? So just as what Yahuwah warned in Barren 28, verse 36, Yahuwah will bring you and your servant to a nation you do not know. All because they are going against what Yahuwah has stated a place for us to follow. So once you're going against it, and Yahuwah will punish you for it. So Bashak Atham, Nathafash, he was caught in their pit, implies entrapment through treaties or rebellion. Another Abrit word, kaki, which means hooks, rings, or fetter, used on wild animals. Is treated like a beast and not a sovereign. And again, because of he going against Torah, against the layout of what Yahuwah said that he should have followed. So this will happen once we go against Yahuwah's will. These things will happen. So he will be treated less than more if we go against Yahuwah's will. So what's the prophetic irony? So this imagery is the reversal of rain from Bereshit or Genesis 1 verse 28. So instead of ruling creation under Yahuwah, the Matsarym becomes an animal subdued by nation. We're going to read Bereshit or Genesis 1 verse 28. Genesis. Bereshit or Genesis 1 verse 28.
And Anaim barak them, And Elohim said to them, bear fruit and increase, and fill the arats, and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the Shamayim, and over all creatures moving on the earth, or the arats.
To the for reading. So we see clearly that Yahuwah gave us authority over the beasts of the earth. And then because of our disobedience and going against Yahuwah, we were subdued like animals by these nations. So the sovereign becomes an animal subdued by these nations, all because they go against what Yahuwah has laid out. So the second lion, so Yahudah or Jehoiakim, when she saw that she had waited and her hope was lost, she took another of her cubs. He walked among lions. So we see the second cub likely refers to Yahudah. Yahudah. Who reigned for another 3 months before being taken to Babylon. And we're going to reference this to the second Malachi 24, verse 8 to 15. I'm going to ask someone to read it for us. Anyone? So Yahudah was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. And his mother name was Necusta, the daughter of Al-Nathan of Jerusalem. And he did evil in the eyes of Yahuwah, according to all that his father did. At that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel, came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. And Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel, came against the city, as his servants were besieging it. And Yahudah, sovereign of Yahudah, and his mother, and his servants, and his heads, and his eunuchs went out to the sovereign of Babel. And the sovereign of Babel, in the 8th year of his reign, took him prisoner. And he took from there all the treasure of the house of Yahuwah, and the treasure of the sovereign house, and he cut in pieces all the objects of gold which Shalum, sovereign of Israel, had made in Akal of Yahuwah, as Yahuwah had said. And he exiled all Jerusalem and all the officers and all the mighty brave men, 10,000 exiled, and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained except the poorest people of the land. And he exiled Yahuwah king to Babel, and the sovereign's mother, and the sovereign's wives, and his eunuchs, and the leading men of the land he exiled from Jerusalem to Babel. So we're looking at verse 4. Takutha, which equal to our
Verse what?
verse 5. Looking at verse 5.
Verse 5. Oh.
Yakhazaqal 19. Looking at verse 5. I'm looking at the Arabic word Takutha, which means her expectations. Oh. So the lioness, which represent Yahudah, sees her plans are crushed, and so she raises another cub, but still clings to the fleshy monarchy rather than covenantal return. So she still holds on to the things of the things that are fleshy, are things that are not pleasing to Yahuwah. So she lead another sovereign into doing what is wrong. So verse 6 said this is aggressive, violent, and anti-Torah behavior. And we can reference this to Shamut or Exodus 22, verse 21, and Mashalim or Proverbs 28, verse 15. I have someone to read it for us.
Do not tread down a sojourner or oppress him, for you were sojourners in the land of Matsarym.
And Mashalim, Proverbs 28, verse 15.
A roaring lion and a charging bear is a wicked ruler over poor people.
All right, total for reading. So again, we see the sovereigns being aggressive and violent and anti-Torah, having an anti-Torah behavior. Looking at verse 7 to 8. His destruction of palaces and desolate cities shows how his rebellion caused not only his downfall, but his nation's suffering. So we see this echoing the pattern of Akan in Yashayahu ban Nun. Yahusha ban Nun are Joshua 7, where one's man wrong defiles the camp. And we if we can recall on this story, we see where the person Akan in that time did something wrong, and it affect the entire camps. Thing was going wrong when they went back to war, and they were losing a lot. If you remember this story clearly, and Joshua, a Yahusha nun, seek Yahuwah and asked what was the problem, and Yahusha told him what was the cause, and they had to get rid of Akan. Yahuwah spoke with Yahuwah, and they had to get rid of Akan in the camp. So walk among lions is aligned with surrounding pagan powers and learning their ways. So in other words, they were mingling or mixing with others, and as I rightly said, learning their ways, doing what they do instead of following what was given to them in the Torah. So adopting their way of their behavior. They brought him in chains, which is equal to Yahuwah, also called Konai or Jeconiah, was exiled to Babylon, where he remained a captive. And we can look in ShamarYahu 24 verse 1. But further down in Malachim, or 2nd Malachim verse 25, verse 27 to 37, we see where he was further released. That is 2nd Malachim 25, looking at verse 27 to 30. So we're going to read ShamarYahu 24 verse 1, where he was, we mentioned he was captive. And then in 2nd Malachim, or 2nd Kings, we're going to read that also, where they say he was released. All right, so we're going to ask someone to read ShamarYahu 24 verse 1, and then someone can read 2nd Malachim 25 verse 27 to 30.
Yahuwah showed me, and look, there were 2 baskets of figs put before the Yakhazaqal of Yahuwah after Nebuchadnezzar, sovereign of Babel, had exiled Yahu, son of Yahudah, sovereign of Yahudah, and the heads of Yahudah with the craftsmen and smith from Jerusalem, and had brought them to Babel.
All right, Toda for reading.
Second Malachim 25, verse 27 to 30. And it came to be in the 37th year of the exile of Yahudah, sovereign of Yahudah, in the 12th month, on the 27th of the month, that Ewil-Merodach, sovereign of Babel, in the year that he began to reign, released Yahudah, sovereign of Yahudah, from prison, and spoke kindly to him, and appointed his throne above the throne of the sovereigns who were with him in Babel, and changed his prison garments, and he ate bread continually before the sovereign all the days of his life. And as his allowance, a continual allowance was given to him from the sovereign, a quota each yom, all the Yumim of his feet.
So for reading. So we're going to look at ShamarYahu 22 verse 24 to 30, where we see he speaks strongly against Yahudah, saying no seed of his will prosper sitting on the Hud's throne, and does cause a covenantal rupture. So we're going to look at ShamarYahu 22, looking at verse 24 to 30. Now someone to read it first.
As I live, declares Yahudah, though ShamarYahu, son of Yahudah, sovereign of Yahudah, were the signet on my right hand, I would still put you off from there. And I shall give you into the hand of those who seek your life, and into the hand of those whose face you fear, into the hand of Nebuchadrezzar, sovereign of Babel, and the hand of the Custites. And I shall hurl you out, and your mother who bore you, into another land where you were not born, and there you shall die. But they shall not return to the land to which their being yearns to return. Is this man, ShamarYahu, a despised broken pot, or an undesirable vessel? Why are they hurled out, he and his descendants, and cast into a land which they do not know? O land, 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 hear the word of Yahudah. Thus said Yahudah, write this man down as childless, a strong man who is not to prosper in his Yumim, for none of his descendants shall prosper sitting on the throne of Dawood, or rule anymore in Yahudah.
So that's for reading. So we see Yahudah speaking strongly against Yahudah about not letting one of his seed sit on the Hud throne. None of his seed will be prosperous sitting on the Hud throne. None. So it's definitely a covenantal rupture. Covenantal rupture. So looking at verse 10, your mother was like a vine in your bloodline. So we see where this is evokes Bereshit 49 verse 11, where Yahudah's inheritance is connected to vines, wine, and kingship. And we're going to reference this. We're going to read Bereshit 49 verse 11, or Genesis 49 verse 11.
binding his donkey to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his robes in the blood of grapes.
So the for reading. So the Davidic dynasty, especially, is pictured as a royal vine, meant to bear righteous fruit. So it echoes Tahal 1 verse 3, planted by waters is equal the original favor and provision given to Yahudah from Yahuwah. And we can, I think most of us know Tahal or Psalms 1 verse 3, but we can still read it. I'm gonna ask someone to read Yahu 17 verse 7 to 8.
Tahal 1 verse 3. For he shall be as a tree planted by the rivers of water, that yields its fruit in its season, and whose leaf does not wither, and whatever he does prospers.
Toda. And Yahu 17 verse 7 to 8. And Barak is a man who trusted in Yahuwah, and who trusts is Yahuwah. For he shall be like a tree planted by the Mahim or waters, which spreads out its roots by the river, and does not see when heat comes. And his leaves shall be green, and in the year of drought he is not anxious, nor does he cease from yielding fruit. Yada Yahuwah. So, looking at verse 11, strong rods were for scepters. These mathut, or rods or branches, are metaphors for rulership, possibly invoking Aaron's or Aaron rod, which symbolize divine election, as stated in Babadabar or Numbers 17. So verse 12. She was plucked up in fury. So this is divine right ruling taking place, not random disfavor. We see Yahuwah himself removes the vine due to their unfruitfulness, as we read earlier about the vine. We're going to reference what I just said to Yashayahu, Isaiah 5, verse 1 to 7.
Please let me sing to the one I love, a song for my loved one regarding his vineyard. My loved one has a vineyard on a fertile hill, and he dug it up and cleared it of stones and planted it with the choicest vine, and built a watchtower in its midst, and also made a winepress in it. And he waited for the yielding of grapes, but it yielded rotten ones. And now, O inhabitant of Jerusalem and man of Yahudah, please judge between me and my vineyard. What more could have been done to my vineyard that I have not done in it? Why, when I waited for the yielding of grapes, did it yield rotten ones? And now, please let me inform you what I am doing to my vineyard, to take away its hedge, and it shall be burned, to break down its wall, and it shall be trampled down, and I lay it waste. It is not pruned or dug, and thorn bushes and weeds shall come up, and I command the clouds not to rain on it. For the vineyard of Yahudah of armies is the house of Yisrael, and the man of Yahudah is his pleasant plant. He looked for right ruling, but see, oppression, for righteousness, but see, weeping.
Oh, Yahudah. So east wind, which we call symbol of right ruling from Babylon, or east of Yahudah. Her strong rods were broken and withered, laws of legitimate Davidic rule. So we're going to look at verse 30. Exile, which we call being cast outside the covenantal land. So the rats, Stasia, who Tasama,
Arat Sia Utsama.
Toda, a land dry and thirsty. This is the opposite of Tahal, or Psalms 1, or the Garden of Adan. The vine of Yahudah is now in Babylonian captivity, uprooted from the land. In other words, in total exile. So looking at the final verse. Fire went out from a rod of her branches. This could refer to Sadak Yahu or Zedekiah, whose rebellion brought total destruction. And that you can reference it to 2 Malachi chapter 25. I read part of it earlier. So the fire coming from within implies self-inflicted right ruling. The house of the wood destroy itself from within. So this is a lament, and it shall be a lament. This emphasizes that this is not yet resolved. The lament continues until restoration comes. Not through these failed rulers, but through a future branch of Yaishi or Jesse rule. And we can read Yeshayahu 11, verse 1.
And it came to be when Yabin, sovereign of Hatzor, heard.
Is that Yeshayahu?
I'm sorry. I'm someplace else. Salaki. I'm there. And a rod shall come forth from the stump of Yashia, and a sprout from his root shall bear fruit.
Toda for reading. So the restoration would definitely not come through these failed rulers. But as we read in Yeshayahu, Isaiah 11 verse 1, but it will coming through, the future branch will be coming through Jesse or Yashi, and not through these failed ruler, the restoration. Yada Yahuwah. All right, mashpakhah. We are going to take a 25 minutes break, and we're going to be back after this break. So 25 minutes, all right? Shabbat Shalom, mashpakhah.
Shabbat Shalom.
Welcome back. So we're going to continue with our convocation, and we're going to go into a different topic this afternoon. So we're looking at Shabbat as a muad, Yahuwah's appointed covenant encounter. By the way, my mashpakhah, are you back?
Done.
That's all the one. Is everybody else back? Are they still?
As soon as I've said in the chat, Khan.
All right. So we're gonna ask someone to read Urkara or Leviticus 23 verse 2.
Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, the appointed times of Yahuwah, which you are to proclaim as Kadash gatherings, my appointed times are these.
All right, toda for reading. Quick question. Which appointed time we're gonna celebrate next week? Not next, the following week. I forget, this week is already almost done. The following week, the 25th of May. Who knows what we're celebrating? No one?
Someone in the chat says Feast of Weeks.
All right, Toda. Sorry, it's not next week. I'm rushing it. I guess I want to reach it quickly, but it's not next week. Or next week we start this week. But it's on the 25th of May. All right. So from an Hebraic analyst, the term Muad is not a generic festival term. It is derived from the root Yahad or Yahad, which conveys the meaning of making an appointment, designating a meeting, or assigning a specific purpose. And if we look in Shamut, or Exodus 29, verse 43, we're going to ask someone to read. This word was used in that verse. That's the Hebrew word, or the Abrit. I'm going to ask someone to read Shamut 29, verse 43.
And there I shall meet with the children of Israel, and it shall be made Kadosh by my esteem.
So the word meet there is used. So that's the Yahad, the Abrit word for meet right there. As you just read, and there I will meet with the children of Israel. So the Shabuat as a mod is not simple celebration of agriculture or historical memory. It is a covenantal encounter, meeting designated, designed by Yahudah himself. It is not subject to human calendrical manipulation, culture interpretation, or sectarian liturgy. Now, from a covenantal standpoint, each Moad serves as a temporal intersection between the Shamayim and the Arats, a divine convergence point where the Creator summons his people to align with his redemptive trajectory. So we know that the Shabbat is aligned with two main things: the Torah at Sinai, which is Exodus 19 or Shamot 19, and also where the outpouring of Yahuwah's Ruach in Matsarym or Acts 2, marking it as a pivotal point of impartation and empowerment. All right? In other words, giving and receiving of the Ruach. So, theological implication. A Hebraic covenant-based theology understand Moadim not merely as a feast, but as a heavenly rehearsal, or Kadash Mikra. These dedicated convocation function as oaths. Reaffirming the participants' alliance to Yahuwah. Shabbat being one of the three pilgrimage feasts intensifies this function. It pulls the worshipper into the divine timetable, orienting them away from the worldly rhythms into the cycle of his reign. So Shabbat as a mode is there for an eschatological rehearsal, covenantal renewal, and a divine empowerment converging into one dedicated space in time. All right. So eschatological rehearsal is understanding what the different moadim stand for and preparing ourselves. So this rehearsal and meeting, time is counted and not dated. So looking at same with Kara, Leviticus 23, looking at verse 15. You shall count for yourself from the Yom after the Shabbat, 7 complete Shabbat shall be counted. And the 7, based on when we started, the 7 will be coming on May the 25th. So from the Hebraic linguistic emphasis, the command usapartham lakam literal means you shall count for yourself. The rule safar implies enumeration, ordered, and even rehearsed a narrative, as in the safar book or story. So this linguistic root connects counting into storytelling and revelation. The command to count is not merely arithmetic, it is covenantal choreography. It demands active participation in a spiritual process of becoming a 49 Yamin ascension from the redemption of Matsarym to the covenantal hour of Sinai. So theological construct. In covenantal theology, this period represents the transformation of a delivery people of a delivered people into the Kadashim. The count emphasizes obedience as a spiritual discipline. Unlike modern fixed date celebration, the Shabbat resists the calendrical complacency. It demands vigilance yom by yom, week by week. This is a Hebrew or Hebrew pedagogy of time, being Kadash pedagogy of time. Being Kadash is not stumbling upon. This is a measure and walk out. The people are not simply waiting for Shabbat, they are ascending to it. The structure, anticipation mirrors the ladder of spiritual refinement, a maturation of desire for Yahuwah's voice, instruction, and presence. In other words, we long for more of Yahuwah. So the implication, by commanding a count instead of stating a fixed date, we see Yahuwah decentralizes human control and places the responsibility of spiritual expectancy on his people. It is a journey of disciplined longing. Counting cultivates attentiveness and anoints the mundane. It weds time to purpose. In this way, time becomes Kadash ground. So looking at the covenant as Sinai, Shabbat as the nation withdrawal to Yahuwah. So I'm going to ask someone to read Shamut 19, reading from verse 17 to 20. And after you finish read that, read Shamut 20 and read verse 1.
And Moshe brought the people out of the camp to meet with Elohim, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. And Mount Sinai was in smoke, all of it, because Yahuwah descended upon it in fire. And its smoke went up like the smoke of a furnace, and all the mountain trembled exceedingly. And when the blast of the ram's horn sounded long and became very strong, Moshe spoke, and Elohim answered him by voice. And Yahuwah came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mountain. Yahuwah called Moshe to the top of the mountain, and Moshe went up.
All right, chapter 20, verse 1.
And Elohim spoke all these words, saying,
All right. Hold on. So from a Hebrew legal marital framework, the Shabbat commemorates Yahuwah's covenantal betrothal to Israel. The events at Sinai are framed in Hebrew thought as a marriage covenant. So the language of Shamud 19 that we read, but looking at verse 5 to 6, it mirrors the language of covenantal possession in betrothal. So we can read Shamud 19, verse 5 to 6.
And now, if you diligently obey my voice and guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a reign of a Kohanim and a Kodesh nation. Those are the words which you are to speak to the children of Yasharah.
So the for reading. So it's like for those who are married and we made a vow to each other, we try our best to honor those vows, or katuba, honor those katuba. So here is Yahuwah telling us if we obey his voice, we be his treasured possession, our sagala. So the Hebrew Greek word kul, often translated voice, also means sound or thunder. It's relational. The people didn't simply hear commands, they encounter the divine voice, which is described deeply experimental terms. Smoke, fire, trembling. This is all happening at Mount Sinai. So this encounter was not legalistic, but transformational, a national immersion into a national immersion into divine presence. So what's the theological depth? So the 10 words are the bar given at Sinai are not arbitrary regulation, but the terms of relational covenant. They are bridal stipulation, not for salvation, but for union. In Hebraic thought, the covenant precedes command. Love precedes the Torah. This is reflected in how Yahudah first redeemed Israel from Matsarym before ever giving commands at Mount Sinai or at Sinai. So the Shabbat becomes the moment when a redeemed people becomes a cleansed, dedicated bride. The marriage at Sinai is echoed later in the prophetic lament, which we can read in Yirmiyahu or Jeremiah 2 verse 2 and Hosea 2 verse 19 to 20. And I also want to read it for us. Anyone?
Yahu 2:2.
Khan?
Oh, Zachariah, you could go ahead.
No, Yirmiyahu.
Go, and you shall cry in the hearing of Jerusalem, saying, Thus said Yahudah, I remember you, the kindness of your youth, the love of your bridehood, and when you went after me in the wilderness, in a land that was not sown.
To the Fareed. And Hosea 2 verse 19 to 20.
And I shall take you as a bride unto me forever, and take you as a bride unto me in righteousness, and in right ruling, and kindness, and compassion. And I shall take you as a bride unto me in trustworthiness, and you shall know Yahudah.
To the Fareed. So we see was scripture showing that the betrothal paradigm was foundational to Israel's self-understanding. So what's the implication? Understanding Shabbat as marital covenant compels believers to view obedience not as legalistic burden, but relational fidelity. The commands are not ways, they are vows of ahaba, or of love. To remember Shabbat is to rehearse the wedding, to remain loyal to the bridegroom, whose voice once shook the mountain and will shake the Shamayim again. And we can reference this to the Abri or Hebrew 12 verse 26. And I read, whose voice shook their rats then, but now he has promised, saying, yet once more, I shake not only the rats, but also the Shamayim. So looking at the first fruit offering, a pattern of dedicated increase. So Uikar 23, looking at verse 17. And it read, bring from your dwelling for a wave offering 2 loaves of bread, and of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour, they are baked with leaven. First fruits to Yahuwah. So from the Hebrew agriculture and spiritual imagery, the first room are the Bakarim were not just an agricultural gift, they were a decoration. The Abrit root Bakar means early, choice, chief, or firstborn. So we see first fruit were understood as covenant markers of ownership and stewardship. The Shavuot is the culmination of the grain harvest, especially the wheat one, which carries strong Mashiach imagery. And we can read Yahukanan or John 6, verse 35, just to reference it.
And Yahusha said to them, I am the bread of Chai. He who comes to me shall not get hungry at all, and he who believes in me shall not get thirsty at all.
Hold up, we're ready. So we see here the Mashiach imagery taking place in Yahukanan 6, verse 35. So the act of waving the loaves, that is stated in Korah 23, verse 20, is a public elevation of what Yahuwah has given. So symbolizing both gratitude and offering back the best portion unto Yahuwah. So this symbolizes that Yahuwah cleanses real, imperfect people. A theme picked up in the renewed covenant, and that is in Acts 2, verse 5 to 11, and Ephesians 2, verse 13 to 19. So we're going to reference these two scripture. I'm going to ask someone to read it for us.
Now in Yerushalayim there were dwelling Yahudim, dedicated men from every nation under the Shemayim. And when this sound came to be, the crowd came together and were confused, because everyone heard them speak in their own language. And they were all amazed and marveled, saying to each other, Look, are not all these who speak Galileans? And how do we hear, each one in our own language in which we were born? Parthians and Madiites and Elaimites, and those dwelling in Aram, Naharaim, both Yahudah and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, both Phrygia and Pamphylia, Mitzrayim and parts of Libui, and Kuriini, visitors from Rome, both Yahudim and converts, Cretians and Arabs. We hear them speaking in our own tongues the great deeds of Elohim.
For reading, and Ephesians 2, verse 13 to 19.
But now in Mashiach Yahusha, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Hamashiach. For he is our peace, who has made both one, and having broken down the partition of the barrier, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, the law of the commands in dogma, so as to create in himself one renewed man from the two, thus making peace, and to completely restore to favor both of them unto Elohim in one body through the stake, having destroyed the enmity by it. And having come, he brought as Bashura, peace to you who were far off, and peace to those near. Because through him we both have access to the Father, or Ab, by one root. So then, you are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the Kadashim and members of the household of Elohim.
Yahudah. So, for the theological construct, the first fruit offering at Shavuot teaches covenantal reciprocity.
Reciprocity. It's a bit of a
tongue twister. So Yahuwah brings increase, but the first and best are to be returned to him in acknowledgement that our provision originates from his hand. Moreover, the two leaven loaves demonstrate an important Hebrew paradox. Though leaven or kamat is often associated with wrongs or corruption. And we can read this in Shamut, Exodus 12, verse 15. But leaven also pictures growth, influence, and transformation. Now we're going to look at Matthew 13, verse 33. We're going to read both. We're going to read Shamut, Exodus 12, verse 15. That shows that leaven is associated with corruption or wrongs. And then we're going to read Yahu, Matthew 13, verse 33. That shows leaven used as transformation. All right, so we're going to ask someone to read Shamut first, and then Matthew second. Anyone?
7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Indeed, on the first day you shall cause leaven to cease from your houses. But whoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that being shall be cut off from Yasharah.
All right, Toda and Yahu, Matthew 13.
Another parable he spoke to them. The reign of the Shamayim is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal until all was leavened.
Toda for it. So we see the contrast in different scripture, where, as I said earlier, one was seen as leaven used as being wrong and corruption, and the other one now where leaven is used as influence and a transformation. Now we see Shaul or Paul uses it to contrast malice and wickedness in in 1 Corinthians 5 verse 8 with the leaven of sincerity and truth. So we can ask someone to read that for us to see what Paul said in 1 Corinthians 5 verse 8.
So then let us observe the festival, not with old leaven, nor with the leaven of evil and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
There we go. So we see where Paul uses it as what you just said, as leaven of sincerity and truth. So in a brief thought, symbols are functional. Their meaning changes based on context and usage, not static categorization. The loaves are not offered on the altar where the leaven is forbidden, but waved before Yahuwah, a distinction revealing that what is unworthy for the altar is not unworthy for cleansing and anointing. So implication. The first root principle extends beyond grain. It applies to lives, family, and purposes. Shabbat challenges every child of Yahuwah to bring the first and finest of their increase, time, wisdom, labor, gifts, and worship. All these as a wave offering before Yahuwah. So the dual loaves also signify the coming together of two houses. And we read this, so we can reference this to Yakhazaqal, Ezekiel 37, verse 16 to 22, where the two houses were made in one in Mashiach, who himself the first fruit of the resurrection. So we can read Yakhazaqal 37 verse 16 to 22, where we see the coming together of the two houses.
And you, son of man, take a stick for yourself and write on it, for Yahudah and for the children of Yasharal, his companions. Then take another stick and write on it, for Yasaph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Yasharal, his companions. Then bring them together for yourself into one stick, and they shall become one in your hand. And when the children of your people speak to you, saying, won't you show us what you mean by these? Say to them, thus said the Adon Yahuwah, see, I am taking the stick of Yasaph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Yasharal, his companions, and I shall give them unto him with the stick of Yahudah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in my hand. And the sticks on which you shall write shall be in your hand before their eyes. And speak to them, thus says Adon Yahuwah, see, I am taking the children of Yasharal from among the Gentiles, wherever they have gone, and shall gather them from all around, and I shall bring them into their land. And I shall make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Yasharal, and one sovereign shall be sovereign over them all. And let them no longer be two nations, and let them no longer be divided into two reigns.
All right, Toda. So we see here in Yakhazaqal where the two sticks come in as one. Now, 1 Corinthians 15 verse 20, I ask someone to read it first.
But now Mashiach has been raised from the dead and has become the first fruit of those having fallen asleep.
Toda for reading. So we see where Mashiach himself, the first fruit of the resurrection. We're going to repeat our Shabbat declaration of Tahal 119, the Tau, and looking at 169 to 176. We're going to read what's in red and then continue what is in black. So after 2, Akkad, Shatim. Takarab, my cry before you, O Yahuwah, make me understand according to your word. Tabuah, my prayer before you, deliver me according to your word. Tabana, praise my lips for you, teach me your statutes. Tan, my tongue of your word, for all your commands are righteousness. Ta'i, I help to be your hand, for I have chosen your orders. Tabawa, for your deliverance, O Yahuwah, and your Torah is my delight. Ta'i, my being, and it praises you, and your right rulings help me. Ta'i, like a lost sheep, seek your servant, for I have not forgotten your commands. Yada Yahuwah.
We are the Matsarym of Yahuwah.
And of course, we say Akkad
Ahaba,
which means
one love.
And we thank all our viewers and subscribers, all the family of the Most High, for viewing today's presentation. So remember to smash that like button
Subscribe to the channel
and hit that notification bell so that you may be alerted every time we upload.